Welcome back to IDP Plus Trends. It is week 8. We are here to talk about some IDP rankings. Going into week 8, we're going to talk some defensive linemen, then some linebackers, and finally some defensive backs. So, without further ado, Steve and I are going to get into our IDP Plus rankings that I do the defensive backs and linebackers for. I am going to start to share my screen so you guys can see where you can get these rankings at. So if you are not subscribed to our channel yet, or our website, our Discord, go ahead and do that at idpplus.com. Get your subscription so you can get all these rankings that we're going to talk about. We're going to break down the top 25, starting with our weekly defensive linemen. So you can see all these rankings here. We have dynasty, consensus, season, weekly, and then projections too. So we're going to go over to hover to weekly defensive linemen to get into our top 25 there. And looking at it, this is not my rankings. This is at JFryDP, one of our writers and colleagues here at IDP Plus. So let's get a look into his list here, starting with number 1 for this week, week 8, TJ Watt. Number 2, Nick Bosa. Number 3, Micah Parsons. Believe he's out now, so that will change. Number 4, Maxx Crosby. Number 5, Myles Garrett. 6, Will Anderson. 7, Will McDonald. 8, Dexter Lawrence. 9, Danielle Hunter. 10, Boye Mafe. 11, Chris Jones. 12, Trey Hendrickson. 13, Josh Hines Allen. 14, Jonathan Grenard. 15, Alex Highsmith. 16, Montez Sweat. 17, Jared Verse. 18, George Karlaftis. 19, Brian Burns. 20, Quinn Williams. 21, Yaya Diaby. 22, Keon White. 23, Rashawn Gary. 24, Trayvon Walker. And 25, Carl Granderson. So talking about this top 25 here, Steve, we got TJ Watt at the top, followed by Bosa. Parsons we know is out. Then we got Crosby and Garrett. So, I mean, this seems like a pretty good top 5. What else appears on this list to you, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, the top 5 is pretty simple. Obviously, as a Cowboy fan, I would love to have seen Micah Parsons back, especially as the 49ers. They have been the absolute kryptonite to Dallas. So that kind of sucks to see Micah out. But as far as, again, like I've mentioned before, when it comes to the defensive line, especially when you're talking those guys like Watt, Garrett, Crosby, like we can nitpick where they rank. At the end of the day, you're putting them in your lineup. You're not even worried about it. You have no worries when it comes to starting that. Now, when you start talking about going down to 25 and players that I think deserve some respect, that I think could move up in this list, after looking at where these guys are ranked, the first one, I'm kind of shocked that he's not on here at all in the top 25 is going to be Zach Allen for Denver. Right now, he's defensive tackle / end or defensive line, however you want to put him in your lineup. It's number 6 for the season so far. He's got 5 sacks. He's been phenomenal. And in the last 3 games alone, he's gotten a sack in each one of them. Like, he's not going to be the biggest tackling machine. So if you're obviously basing most of this on, whether it be defensive tackle or defensive end, the tackling portion could be a little bit better. But Zach Allen has been fantastic for the Denver Broncos. He has been amazing at what he's been able to do for them. He was somebody that no one talked about during the offseason. You probably didn't draft him. He's probably been waiver wire number 1 since week 1. And he's kind of stayed up there. He's been very, very consistent. I have him in one of my IDP leagues that I picked up because I had Micah Parsons and I had to deal with letting him go. And Allen's been great. I've loved what he's been able to do. The Denver Broncos defense has actually played pretty well. Considering that's what they used to be. They used to be really dominant on the defensive side. So Zach Allen is definitely somebody I love. I think he definitely deserves a lot more respect. He should be up here higher because if I'm going to take someone lower, is in that same position, which is Chris Jones. Him at number 11 right now in the rankings is way too high for me. I understand probably the matchup seems really enticing. You're going against a Raiders team that got Minshew back there. The running game isn't great. Devontae Adams is gone. Jacoby Myers, we don't know if he's going to play. Like, it's a mess. Like, the Raiders are a mess. So I can see why putting Chris Jones at 11 seems so, enticing. But Chris Jones has not been Chris Jones this year. If you're looking at his average points per game, It is his second lowest since he's been in the NFL. And he's a Pro Bowl player. Like I understand he's rostered very heavily because of his name, but this season he has absolutely been just horrible when it comes to actual fantasy. Now he's got great value in the actual game. Like Kansas City is winning because of their defense, and Chris Jones deserves a lot of credit. But if you're talking just stats, he has been horrendous, especially in his standards. So right now he's at a point where he can be worth just dropping and not even holding on to, because right now he's had one double digit performance. He's not getting a lot of QB pressures. He's not getting sacks. And I get it. He as dominant as he's been in the NFL, he is getting double teamed. He's getting a lot of the attention his way. So, but if I'm going to flip around, I'm taking Chris Jones off this list, and I'm absolutely moving Zach Allen. I think Zach Allen's top 10, just because of what he's been able to do. And another guy I love, again, just deserves a little bit more respect. Somebody I talked about in my waiver wire video and waiver wire article at IDPplus.com is AJ Epinesa for the Buffalo Bills. He's been on a nice little hot streak. You're looking at, in as far as the last 3 games, he's considered defensive 8 so far. So he's in the top 10. He has been available in a lot of leagues. He's not getting a lot of support and love at all for whatever reason. His snap count has been absolutely increased. The Buffalo Bills defense is trying to figure themselves out. They got more injuries, like Bernard's out this week. Like they're just constantly dealing with stuff on that side of the ball. But Epinesa has been great, and he's probably available in your league. So if you're looking to stream a defensive end this week, look for the waiver wire on that one, because he's been fantastic. Like right now, he's 2 forced fumbles in the last 3 games, 3 sacks in the last 2 games. Like he's been fantastic. Like he's just been on the ball. Defensive 8 right now, defensive end 8. He should get a lot more respect, and he's just, again, kind of forgotten about in this list. Which is understandable. He's not someone who's been fantastic all season, but if you're looking at trends and you're looking at matchups, like this is a good matchup against, the Tennessee Titans. He has the ability, especially when you're dealing with either Mason Rudolph or Will Levis at quarterback. Both of those guys are going to hold on to the ball. So that's definitely somebody that I really like. And if you're going to replace somebody, the person I would replace with Epinesa would be Josh Hines-Allen. Right now on this list, he's 13th, way too high. He hasn't been relevant this season. His teammate is obviously Trayvon Walker's been a great, and he's well deserved. He should be on this. He's actually lower on this. He's at 24, even though Trayvon Walker's been outperforming Hines-Allen. And Josh Hines-Allen is a Pro Bowl, very talented defensive end. Showed up really well the last few seasons for Jacksonville. Got paid. I'm not saying that's why he's not playing well. Sometimes that correlates. But he just has not been himself. If you're looking at stats, 3 sacks so far this season, only a total of 17 tackles, and I think they've played 6 games. That's just unacceptable for his type of talent, his type of performance. So again, if I'm going to replace, and put Epinesa in here, I would take Josh Hines-Allen down. I definitely would move Trayvon Walker up ahead of Hines-Allen at this point. And the last person I really love this week, and even this season so far, who's not getting the respect, is Van Ginkel. Like I didn't think anything highly of that, that tag all season. Like when he got signed, I was like, not really sure how I felt about that. I wasn't sure what my Minnesota's plan was, but Brian Flores had an idea. Brian Flores has been a great defensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings. Absolutely wanted Van Ginkel, and Van Ginkel's been showing up. He doesn't have the name to him, but the fact is I'm seeing him disrespected, and not even in this ranking, just in rankings in general. Yet he's been phenomenal. Right now, just quick stats. He's not anything crazy, but he's averaging 11 points a game in fantasy. He's got 5 sacks for the season. Obviously, he's gotten touchdowns. He's gotten interceptions. He's got fumble forces. He's making pressures on the quarterback. He's making the job for the rest of the Minnesota Vikings a lot easier. Now, obviously, they played on Thursday night, so by the time we recorded this, he still had a good game. I think he put up over 8 points in fantasy, but he's still not being given enough respect. And the fact that he's 28th in this list, crazy to me. He's got to be higher. He's top 10 every single week at this point. He's almost one of those guys you can kind of set and forget and feel good about putting him in your lineup.
Yeah, good points there, Steve. I agree with you. especially on Zach Allen, man. I mean, he is kind of to this point has been consistent with the tackles. Only 3 last week, but before that it was 4 games with 5 or more tackles. So he has been rather consistent overall. Hopefully he gets back to his old ways here in week 8. And then, yeah, man, speaking of trends, AJ Epinesa, uptick in snaps. I believe he's close to 80% now. So it's like anytime you're doing that and getting production, ride the wave, right? So exactly, I could see him making a case for this top 25. Some guys who I think also could be, from my perspective, is I mean, just based on the matchup, I love Jonathan Cooper too. Not somebody who just has to get that sack to make his day. So Jonathan Cooper's a safe floor here, I think, at Carolina versus Carolina here at number 29. So he's right outside the top 25, respectively. I think he could have a nice week if you're thinking about using him this week. I mean, Bryce Young is the quarterback. I think he has a great opportunity to get to him and maybe get some tackles along the way, too. So Cooper, I think, is a nice start this week. And then further down the list, we got him at 30, I believe 38. Somebody who depends on your scoring. I mean, doesn't seem like tackles. He has a safe floor with that. He's only gotten a couple tackles in the last 2 games, but has gotten big plays. One of them was a recovery for a touchdown, and the other one, or back-to-back games with sacks as well. So Dante Fowler, I mean, take it with a little grain of salt. He blew up last week. That was part of the touchdown. It happened, so you can't really discount it. But you take that away, he got a sack and a couple tackles. So that might be something that you're looking at if the trend continues versus Chicago with Fowler too. And then maybe you're in a deeper league. I mean, I know you have to be subscribed to see our full list. See, we got 65 names on here, so it's pretty deep. But at the same time, maybe you are in a deeper league, and there might be guys out there, depending on your scoring. Maybe if you're a high tackle, if you're looking for tackles, tackle heavy leagues, maybe you're looking at Adam Butler for Las Vegas versus the Chiefs this week. Maybe he gets a couple tackles. He's been having 4 or 5 tackle games. So I think he could be a decent option if you're looking that deep. Another guy is Grady Jarrett. We talked about him, Steve. This is week 3 now. We talked about him on our waiver wire articles and tweets. This is at least the second consecutive week that we're just saying, man, he provides that solid tackle floor. Gets a matchup this week versus Tampa Bay. Not sure it's gold, but in division matchup, I think Grady Jarrett can extend the streak and maybe get 10 fantasy points for your team again. So Butler and Grady Jarrett if you're in a deeper league. And man, I really like Jonathan Cooper and Dante Fowler this week. So it's a good list. I mean, very tough to gauge, very tough position when you're looking at sacks versus tackles and expected points. So it could go a lot of different ways. Check out the rankings, subscribe if you haven't yet. We're going to kick over to linebackers right now. So let me go to hover over weekly and then go to linebackers. This is my rankings here. So Steve's going to pick my brain. Once again, we're going to go over the top 25, but if you want to see the rest of them, I have, let's see, 70 linebackers on here. So if you're in a very deep league, subscribe and check out our full rankings. But here it is, going from number 1 after a monster game last week, Roquan Smith. Number 2, Fred Warner. Number 3, Zaire Franklin. Number 4, Bobby Wagner. Number 5, Jermaine Pratt. Number 6, Logan Wilson. Number 7, Eric Kendricks. 8, Dorian Williams. 9, Robert Spillane. 10, Ivan Pace. 11, EJ Speed. 12, Jeremiah Owusu Koromoa. 13, Levante David. 14, Kaiser White. 15, Nakobe Dean. 16, TJ Edwards. 17, Devin Lloyd. 18, Quay Walker. 19, that should be, is Kenneth Murray. 20, Nick Bolton. 21, Zach Baun. 22, Tyrell Dodson. 23, Cody Barton. 24, Ernest Jones. And finally, 25, Trevin Wallace. Steve, first off, we have a couple injuries this week. I mean, the rankings, hopefully you don't pick me too hard here. But we do have Aziz Al-Shaair is out. So Neville Hewitt doesn't make the top 25, but 17 tackles in the last 2 games, playing 100% of snaps. Since Al-Shaair went down, makes a good spot start this week. Terrell Bernard's out, so Balin Spector becomes a streamer versus Seattle. Troy Anderson is out. Not that he would crack this list anyway, but another solid linebacker you might have been banking on. Makes for Nate Landman a good spot start, likely going to play 100% of games. And I didn't pay respects much to the Jets here. Quincy Williams, Jamie Sherwood, Mosley, that kind of, has a bad taste in my mouth this week. I kind of faded them in the rankings. And then finally, Jacksonville, they get back Foye Oluokun, it looks like. So I don't have him in this top 25, but he could end up being that guy. But I'm just not willing to really take that risk right now because Ventrell Miller has been playing well. Devin Lloyd, we know, is cemented in there. And Doug Peterson gave us a bad, vote of confidence, saying that he thinks that all three of these linebackers will have a spot for this upcoming week 8. So I'm not sure what to make of that. But Steve, with those given injuries and with the situation here we are in week 8 with no buys, what do you think about this list?
It's not a bad list. One thing that I think we got to mention is the trade between Tennessee and Seattle.
Yeah.
Essentially just swapping out linebackers at that point. So I am interested how that's going to play out, because Ernest now goes to Seattle and then Jerome Baker's now in Tennessee. So I'm not sure how I feel about that because I actually had some shares of Jerome Baker and he had some flashes in Seattle, but now, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it, but it did happen. It's something to be noteworthy of, when it comes to these rankings. I'm a little bit higher on Cody Barton. I'd probably move Zach Baun a little bit down, but I do like Cody Barton. I'm glad you at least put him on the list. I think he's been disrespected. One guy who I'm kind of disappointed, and I understand why you have him lower, is Alex Anzalone for the Detroit Lions. I thought he was going to have an amazing season, and he had some good games, and he got hurt, and then he just hasn't really been himself. So I'm not really sure how I feel about him yet. I'm a homer here, so I'm going to move up DeMarvion Overshown. I think Overshown, Agent Zero. I wish they gave him that 0. I think he deserves a little bit more. I think now that he's got Kendricks back, Overshown did okay kind of filling in when Kendricks got hurt. But I think having Kendricks back, that leadership just allows Overshown to be free again and kind of just be a free range roaming linebacker, which is what I think he's better at because of his speed. So I think he could crack into your top 20 this week against the 49ers because the 49ers have no wide receivers at this point. They got Ricky Pearsall, who got shot, who is now really playing in his first full game as the true wide receiver 1 because Jennings is out. We don't know the update with Deebo Samuel. Obviously Kittle is still dealing with an injury, so they might just try to run the ball as much as they can. And I think, both Cowboys linebackers are going to be top 20 for sure. I think Kendrick's obviously in the top 10. So I don't think the list is bad at all. Going through, I love the Ivan Pace. Roquan's finally starting to show up. He had a great game. So I think that definitely, I don't know if I still have him at 1, but we'll see how that plays out this week. I think with Cleveland, they are going to try to obviously introduce Chubb, help Winston out. So
right,
I'm trying to. A lot of it is I'm looking at game scripts and who's going to have opportunities. Who's going to have the ability, if they're playing behind or something like that, or if there's going to be a lot of running. Looking at it. So because the worst for a linebacker is when a team goes into a pass only mode and because they're down so bad and you're like, crap, my linebacker has no value anymore.
Right.
So, especially some of these linebackers obviously play in the nickel package and things like that. But I like the list. Like I said, a couple tweaks I would move is just, Overshown, I think shows up in the top 20. I like him a lot this week. I think he's just because of the game script and I think what 49ers are going to do, I think he has to be moved up a little bit.
You think put all the viewers and listeners at ease here? Do you think Overshown, the emergence of Damon Clark, are we worried about a timeshare at all, eating each other's food, or do you think Overshown comes back and plays 100%?
No, I think Overshown comes back. I think Damone Clark had value only because Kendricks was out.
Okay.
Even though I like Damone Clark, Damone Clark's in a weird spot. Damone Clark was a Dan Quinn guy. I think he fit really well in that Dan Quinn defense. I don't know if he quite fits in this defense at all. I don't know how I feel about where he should be at. I want him on the field because he does have the ability to make plays. So, as a Cowboy, I've been watching every game that I possibly can. So, I don't know what to do with him. Because you got to have him on the field, but at the same time, I just don't think he fits this defensive scheme very well unless it's an injury happening. So I think Overshown does take I think he's the one who really takes advantage of the fact that Kendricks is back.
Okay. Steve, another two questions for you here while I have you. Ernest Jones and Tyrell Dodson. I have Tyrell at 23, Ernest Jones at 25. My opinion is because it's the first week, but I like Ernest Jones the rest of the season in Seattle more than Dodson. Am I crazy or are you with me here?
No, I think he's in a good spot. I think he is the better linebacker, for sure. I mean, he was great in LA before he, that whole thing got messed around, and because I thought he was going to be a top 10 linebacker coming into the season before the trade happened. I don't think he was a good fit for Tennessee, anyways. Um,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think, like, when's the last time you really had a really good Tennessee linebacker? It's been a while. Like Kenneth Murray's doing well, um, but
Maybe the Wesley Woodyard days.
yeah, it's. I feel like it's just been a while since you've really had a dominant. I think of, like, I'm showing my age. Like Keith Bullock. Like, yeah, it's just been a while. Like the
Mm,
2000s, early 2000s, when you had a really good linebacker for Tennessee. So I don't think Ernest was in the right spot. I think going to Seattle's perfect. Seattle's always had a pretty good middle linebacker for a while. Obviously Bobby Wagner, and then he obviously moved around, and part of it was the defensive scheme. But I just think in general, I think they do a really good job of producing good linebackers in fantasy. So I think he gets a win. I do think, unfortunately, Jerome Baker loses out in this trade,
yeah.
and I think his
I think
value
so
just
too.
drops.
I think so too. And Kenneth Murray, to his tribute here, we see him in the top 20, at 20th overall. So I think he's due for a big week and a nice matchup versus Detroit at Detroit actually. So he would be a nice play, maybe available out there because he really kind of flew under the radar to this point with Ernest Jones there. And then Steve, one more question for you. We actually got this question on the comment section of our last video for Week 7 IDP rankings. Somebody asked, Zach Baun, are we worried about him? Nakobe Dean's playing lights out. Zach Baun's tackle markers have been down. I'm not exactly, in the beat writers' heads in Philly, but if you had to guess, I mean, I told this guy, I answered to him and said that, yeah, I'm a little bit worried. And I mean, Nakobe Dean, double-digit tackles and 2 sacks last week. Do you support that notion as well?
Yeah, Bond had a great start to the season, and ever since Nakobe's kind of really gotten into his own, um, Bond just kind of disappeared. I think Bond was a surprise, anyways.
Yeah.
No one expected it. He came in because of an injury due to Devin White, and then obviously they liked what they saw out of Bond, so Philly felt comfortable letting go of Devin White, and I think that might have been a mistake because Bond is not really. Um, the last 3 weeks hasn't really produced enough to be like, oh, well, maybe that was a smart move. I
Right.
will say this, though, because Nakobe Dean has been so successful the last few weeks. I was going through because, look at running backs and different things for starting sits throughout the week. And because of that, the last 3 weeks, the run defense has actually been really good for Philly. Like, it's changed night and day. So you've got to, that I think that factor of Dean has just made a huge difference because ever since then, Dean's, I think, the top 5 right now when it comes to the last, few games, where Bond is in the like 30-40 range as far
Mhm.
as a linebacker. So the trend matters. The trend is there for a reason. And I think, Dean is the guy. And Bond, unfortunately, I think especially if you're talking trades or dynasty, I think his value's gone now. I think you had a moment to get rid of him if you had the chance, and I think right now too many people are ready for it, and they know not to buy him.
And at the same time, if you looked at his, tackle percentage, it was so high that first couple weeks, it was like he couldn't continue that pace.
Yeah.
I doubted him. I looked bad for a couple weeks there. Still might, but at the same time, yeah, Zach Baun's coming back down to earth. I think it's the Kobe Dean show too, Steve. So, yeah, he's a great start. I mean, they get a tough matchup in Cincinnati this week. Tough start, but I believe that Kobe Dean, especially 2 sacks last game, cannot be discredited. One, you could look in the box score and see a sack, and it might be a technicality. But you get 2 sacks, it's not a fluke. So the Kobe Dean's doing something right there, and get it while it's good. Top 15 play for me, and I think a lot of managers alike too. So great top 25 here, of course, by yours truly. So moving into our defensive backs. But before we do that, I wanted to mention a promo we are running at IDP Plus. So if you're not subscribed, if you're not in the Discord on the website, like you're missing out big time. We got great rankings. We got 30, 40 people compiling different articles, Steve, myself included in that group, but a lot of people with a lot of knowledge. So take advantage of that right now with our promo for 20% off site wide. So right now, we are still running the IDP Plus subscription. You can still get 20% off any subscription for a limited time with the promo code PROPS and get access to our tools, our data, our IDP articles, and don't miss out on our subscriber Discord. How you get that is you go to idpplus.com/membership. Whenever you check out, use that promo code PROPS. Once again, the website is idpplus.com/memberships. Steve, we are going to move into our last segment here. We're going to go into our weekly rankings for defensive backs, and I also created this list too. So, we have a lot of injuries this week. You'll see some unprecedented times, unheralded names, maybe that have not cracked this list before. I like to take risks. That's why I do a betting show as well. But anyway, right now, as it stands in week 8, going into this weekend, Paulson Adebo, as we know, is out for the year. He was a top 5 defensive back, I'm sure, in many scoring systems there. So he's out. Might shake things up for Alontae Taylor. Maybe he continues to eat. Maybe he gets even better. Who knows? The jury's out. Then we got Jaquan Brisker, we know, is out. Elijah Hicks started in place of him the last game versus Jacksonville and collected 5 tackles and also played 100% of snaps. This week Hicks would get a Washington offense, which would be a decent matchup. So Elijah Hicks may be someone to stream there. It was not Jonathan Owens. Marlon Humphrey has been good this year, but is doubtful to play this week versus the Browns. So that's going to be, of course, if you're in a cornerback heavy league, that's a big hit. He's been producing at a high level, getting tackles. Tony Adams from the Jets is also doubtful. He doesn't look like, obviously, he's going to play, and it doesn't look like that you really want a piece of any backup there. They already have Ashton Davis, who we know can produce tackles at a high rate. He is even out, so they're down to scraps there in New York. So that's big trouble. Then we got Deshaun Elliott, a kind of a corner piece right now in the community, is questionable for the Giants this week. For the Steelers, but playing the Giants, that would be a big loss for the Steelers defense. I do think he will play, but keep an eye on that. Then we got PJ Locke, probably not somebody you're banking on, but he is doubtful if you're in a deeper league. Somebody I really like this week, Diamador Lenore, is actually questionable right now. I think with an illness. So he was going to be somebody who's the last couple of weeks has been doing really well, scoring a lot of points, different ways, whether it be tackles or splash plays. He is now questionable. So got a good matchup, but he has to get healthy and make the list first. So keep an eye on him. Tyke Smith from Tampa Bay has already been ruled out. And finally, in addition to Jaquan Brisker being out, Kyler Gordon at cornerback is out. So we've got a lot of injuries here for defensive backs, Steve. But here's what I'm going with at top 25. Starting with number 1, Mr. Dependability so far, Nick Cross. Number 2, tough 2. I love this guy, Julian Love. Number 3, Budda Baker. Number 4, Antoine Winfield Jr. Number 5, Brian Branch. Number 6, Jesse Bates. Number 7, Kyle Duggar. Number 8, Derwin James. Number 9, Brandon Jones. Number 10, Kyle Hamilton. 11, Tyler Nubin. 12, Xavier Woods. 13, Deshaun Elliott. 14, Xavier McKinney. 15, Julian Blackman. 16, DeMar Hamlin. 17, Kevin Byard. 18, Quentin Lake. 19, Alontae Taylor. 20, Evan Williams. 21, Riley Moss. 22, Jalen Jones. 23, Cam Bynum, already played. 24, Minkah Fitzpatrick. And 25, Trayvon Merrick. So, Steve, there's some names maybe you haven't seen on this list before. Might be some new, maybe you know them, but you haven't seen them on a top 25 list before. So what do you think about this list? Keep in mind, it is tackle heavy. So you see a guy like Xavier McKinney, In some leagues out there, Xavier McKinney is out producing points wise, even Nick Cross, if you're not playing in a tackles heavy league. But of course, if you listened to me before, I plan for tackles because that's really only what I can gauge. It's tough to gauge interceptions, sacks, that kind of thing, unless you're, really a shark. And I give you a lot of credit. But yeah, we're looking at the tackles here. So that's what you might see reflected in the rankings, Steve. But what do you say?
Yeah. Top 10 looks really good. Obviously, guys who make tackles, but also guys realistically of that top 10 who also create big plays, right? Interceptions, fumbles. So don't hate the list. You can go either way with those. And all 10 of those guys, again, are players you're going to put in your lineup and not have to worry about it. I will say the biggest surprise is Brandon Jones. He's actually been really phenomenal. Especially from a cornerback position. And I think we've talked about it before. Like the cornerback position has now kind of become the dominant defensive back position. It wasn't always like that. You always relied on safeties, to kind of handle that defensive back when it came to IDP. But this year, for whatever reason, the cornerbacks are actually making tackles. They're getting involved in the run. They're I don't know what it is, but these guys are great. I've never started cornerbacks before, and I've been starting Riley Moss every single week because he's making plays, he's making tackles. I may make that change this week, but again, not something I'm typically going to see. Looking at the rest of your top 25, don't hate it. The only thing I would have loved to have seen someone get a little more credit was Byron Murphy. Again, not tackle based, more just big play. And he did have a big play on Thursday. So he can make those type of, performances. The only reason I felt Byron Murphy was going to be good just because we knew, at least I knew the Rams are going to pass heavy when Cooper Kupp was announced. And then they added Puka Nacua out of nowhere. And you're like, oh, well, they're really going to throw the ball. So, just got they got a little antsy there. But other than that, looking at it, the people you kind of left out, it's tough. Like, you had Curl there, he did get hurt in that game, which was unfortunate. I saw that his knee get bent backwards, so kind of scary there. Demordor, Lenore is probably another one you could possibly have moved up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's going to have a lot of value. I think he's going to be really tough against Dallas. I think he's going to do really well. Other than that, really, the rest of these guys are like hit or miss. Like some of these guys will have an outstanding game, and you'll feel bad by not playing them. But at the same time, you're gonna kick yourself if you put them in your lineup because you felt something and then they didn't perform. Like when it comes to IDP, there's not always an upside. You got to play the safe floor with some of these guys, and you're looking at what they've done in the past 3 weeks, 5 weeks, whatever it is. Like a lot of these guys have been really consistent. I really wish Marlon Humphrey was going to play because I think he definitely deserves some higher because he's been actually really good. Like he's been making tackles. Obviously he had 2 interceptions against the Bucks, but the week before that he had 9 total tackles. Like he can tackle, so I like him a lot. Hopefully the injury doesn't hold him back, but no, the list looks good. I think this is one of the better defensive back ones out there, and now if you go into a maybe you got flex play in the IDP, then you get a little funky with some of these guys. But as far as you're talking just a 12-team league, you got 2 defensive backs you're playing. I think this list looks really good.
Right. And some people there's some disputes here. I'm sure if you go to other websites and you check rankings, you probably won't see somebody like Julian Blackmon as low as 15. That's kind of a hunch play. That's a Johnny special here. And for me, I'm kind of looking at history. Week 1, when Houston played the Colts, Nick Cross was out there. He played 100% of snaps. So did Blackmon. Blackmon ended with 13 tackles. So to me, he plays 100% still. Had a nice game last week. Great matchup for him. I think Julian Blackmon is justified at 15. And then a name that many of you viewers and listeners maybe not have is definitely not a household name yet, but haven't heard of, is the rookie Evan Williams. This guy's been electric in the last 3 games. I think it was like they were juggling back and forth between Javon Bullard and him. And finally, he's just making, in addition to, a handful, almost double-digit tackles, he's also making, big plays, forced fumbles and, passes defensed. And, man, him and McKinney back there form a nasty 1-2 punch. And I think that's the reason why he got 100% snaps again. hopefully they can make it 2 weeks in a row. I know 20 is a little high and the snaps aren't guaranteed, but I think he just played through the roof. So I do think that he's going to get upwards of 90%, which would make for a good potential for Evan Williams. Yeah, only owned in 1% of Yahoo leagues. So to me, he's like kind of like my cheat code this week. I know he's out there in your leagues. And you know what? Like Riley Moss, like Steve mentioned, consistency is important. Maybe if you're in a close matchup, you play Riley Moss, who's going to get you your 10 to 14 points over Evan Williams. But if you're really reaching for the stars, I do think there is something there in Green Bay with Evan Williams. And maybe a lot of people are discounting him because Javon Bullard's there, rightfully so. But I think Evan Williams is going to surprise a lot of people and already has. So, that was a little bit unconventional there by me, but you got to take risks to win ships, the way I see it. And yeah, man, just Steve also mentioned the year of the cornerback. I mean, we got Alontae Taylor, Riley Moss, Jalen Jones, Marlon Humphrey was going to make that list, but it looks like doubtful on the wrong side of doubtful. So he can't be on my top 25. But yeah, that's what it is right now. If you want to see the rest of it, I have so many in here. I'll go all the way in the hundreds. So I will have to take out the players who are, deemed inactive, and it's going to be a nice list for you guys, especially, if you're in a deeper league. So check out our rankings, check out our website in general, become a subscriber today. If you like what we're doing, leave a comment. If you have any questions, leave a comment. We will get back to those. We were hopefully going to make this a trend, talking about rankings. It seems like you guys like it, so we're going to keep it up. And best of luck coming up in week 8. And thanks for viewing and watching. Steve, is there anything else you'd like to say before we sign off?
No, let's get week 8 going, man. No bye weeks this week. That's great. A lot of football.
That's right. Best of luck, fellas. Bless.